Welcome back to the channel, guys. Episode 6 of House of the Dragon has landed. Apologies, it's been a couple of days late. I've been super busy with work and the channel, and I've just got around to watching it actually last night. So here we are, fresh in the morning, doing a recording. This is episode 6, called The Princess and the Queen, which is what we can see here. And by God, the drama notch is ramped up to 1,000 in this one, ladies and gents. Absolutely amazing. So this is the polar opposite to Rings of Power. And I know I'm not going to shut up about Rings of Power because it's pissing me off. This show, on the other hand, is absolutely skyrocketing. So it goes without saying, this review is going to contain heavy spoilers for the episode. So if you haven't watched it yet, feel free to add this to your watch later list and come back at a later time to check it out. Set the scene. We start off with a much older Rhaenyra. So if you guys didn't know, there was a scheduled and planned recast for Alicent and Rhaenyra. And the reason is because in the prior 5 episodes, Rhaenyra and Alicent are quite young. They're in their sort of early 20s. And we're sort of 10 years on now. So it's very difficult to make those actresses look older. Whereas the guys that play Viserys, Daemon, Kristen, all the older actors basically can easily be made to look a little bit older. Dab of makeup, dab of prosthetics, a little bit of grey hair, and you're all good to go. Whereas the younger ladies are much difficult to pull off, and it looks a bit weird if you put prosthetics and stuff in. So they decided to go for a recast, which I think was a sensible move. A bit of a shame because I was really getting used to Millie and the girl that plays Alicent, just in terms of their delivery, the way that they adapted to the characters, and I thought they were fantastic at acting both of those roles. So a round of applause for those two. But hopefully the 2 new actresses who play Alicent and Rhaenyra will pull off the same stunts. So anyway, we are 10 years on from episode 5, and a lot of things have changed, a lot of things have grown. The main thing that's happened is lots of people now have kids. So we start off the episode with Rhaenyra giving birth, and once the child's born, the queen basically requests her presence immediately. We then get a very tense and slow walk from Rhaenyra, who is being escorted by one of her, I assume he's like Kingsguard, one of her guards basically. We haven't seen him before, this is a new character, and he's sort of walking her up the stairs. Before we get the walk of, towards the queen, the guard actually holds the baby and says to Rhaenyra, congratulations, he's beautiful, all that kind of stuff. And then we get the slow walk. Now, the obvious, we get another typical Game of Thrones carrot dangling going on. You get the slow build music, the violins are playing nice and slowly. It's stuff that we've seen before at the Red Wedding. Or when you get this, you get that feeling that someone is going to be murdered, someone's going to drop dead, something bad is going to happen as they're walking up the stairs, and everyone's sort of congratulating them as they're walking past. So Rhaenyra's got the baby in arms, everyone's sort of saying congratulations. They're all like common folk, people of the court, and they're walking along, and you get that sort of slow, horrible sort of burning feeling in your chest that you've seen in many Game of Thrones episodes before, where you just sense that there's trouble brewing. And my immediate thought was the baby's going to get killed in front of Rhaenyra, and it's going to cause absolute havoc. What a way to kick off that episode if that was the case. That doesn't happen, but I just loved being in the moment where you can feel that tension and you can feel it build into something and just questioning what the hell's going to go on, basically. We then get Sir Criston, who is alive. So Alicent obviously saved him in episode 5. If you remember, he nearly topped himself with the shame, the guilt, through sleeping with Rhaenyra and believing what she said and basically pouring his heart out to her. It backfired. She didn't want to know. She didn't want to move with him. She didn't want to travel. She said she has to stick to her duty, which is kind of against what she's always said to him anyway. So naturally, he felt quite betrayed. So he was going to top himself in episode 5. Couldn't deal with the shame, but Alicent managed to save him. She steps in and says, don't do that. You're better than this. And it looks like he's become a guard to Alicent, and he's come quite close to her in the process of her saving him. So Criston says congratulations to Rhaenyra, sort of gives the nod to the guard as well. We then see Viserys. Now, I was absolutely gobsmacked when I saw Viserys. I was pleased. Couldn't tell you how pleased I was to see him. He's one of my favourite characters in the show, but I honestly thought he was dead. From episode 5, he took a hell of a fall, and he was bleeding out of every sort of hole, and you just see this little rat that's like licking up the blood, and obviously that's the start of, I would imagine, Viserys' downfall, because he's alive in this episode. He's much older. Obviously, 10 years have gone on now from episode 5, but he looks hanging. He is hobbling around, and he comes over and sort of says, "How's my grandson?" And I was like, shit, Viserys is alive. Okay. The baby's named Joffrey. So a little Easter egg, little nod to the Joffrey. And it's obviously not the Joffrey, because Joffrey is a Baratheon or, Lannister, whichever way you look at it. And so the new baby's called Joffrey. Now, what we don't realise is that Rhaenyra has also had another child. So she's got 2 children at the minute. And this will be the 3rd. And also Alicent's got boys as well. So it's kind of, everyone's sort of spreading their seed. And you can kind of feel where this is going to go. With the tensions that's been built up over the last 5 episodes, the rivalry, the betrayal, the lying, it's all going to culminate in an almighty war, I think, a sort of rebellion. It starts with some of the other houses in the series as well. They get involved if you've read the books. But this is going to end badly. Stuff is going to hit the fan. And it absolutely culminates to that in the end of this episode. So the next scene we get is Sir Laena, and he is married to Rhaenyra. So the end of episode 5, I thought the vows weren't completed. And I thought that was going to cause a knock-on effect with Viserys dying in episode 5. And it was going to spark the Valyrian family to basically say, fuck you to the truce. We're going to now do what we want to do. We don't have to do anything in line with the Targaryen rules and the Targaryen tradition. Because your king's dead, you have no claim to the throne. You're a woman, all that kind of stuff. I thought that was going to come. But they did get married. They've had 3 children. And we are witnessing at this point a dragon egg being given to commemorate the birth of the 3rd son, which is lovely, joyful, and it's a tradition that the Targaryens always do to give good fortune to newborn children. So we then get a scene where we're in the dragon pit, and we see a young dragon being tamed, basically. There's practice going on in the dragon pit, and we see a little bit about how the Targaryens tame their dragons, which is pretty cool. We've never seen anything like that before on Game of Thrones. Especially with Daenerys, she obviously builds up an emotional bond and cares for them in sort of like a motherly way, but we don't actually see how she tames them in terms of what training she does, how she makes them obey her, and all that kind of stuff. And as we know, Drogon was an absolute bastard to get tamed because he just had an absolute nasty streak in him, and just had a knack for killing things. So dragons are incredibly difficult to tame, and we saw a little bit about how the process is and how it works in that sense for the Targaryens. So this is a really cool scene. We see one of the boys saying to the dragon Dracarys, tries to get it to sort of spout fire on command, and it doesn't work. We then see Aegon. So Aegon is sort of approaching his teens at this point now. He's sort of 11, 12, pushing 13 maybe. He's an absolute jumped up little shit. Got an absolute attitude about him. And he calls the command for Dracarys, and the dragon grills a goat. So a goat's brought in, Jurassic Park style, a little bit of meat, and he says Dracarys to the dragon, and it grills the goat. So Aemond, who is one of the youngest boys at this point, gets absolutely pissed off. He can't understand why the dragon doesn't listen to him. And the 2 older boys take the piss out of him. So they're basically saying, you're a little runt of the litter. And by the way, we've got you your own dragon fit for purpose. And Aemond, unfortunately, is drawn into it. He's like, what? You got me a dragon? Let's have a look. I can't, thank you. This is going to be great. He's going to feel like he's one of the boys then. And they bring out this fucking pig. And this pig is like dressed up in feathers. He's got like little horns attached to him, all that kind of stuff. And they've done the pig out to look like a dragon. And obviously they just rip the shit out of him, just laughing at him, saying that you'll never be a dragon rider. And Aemon naturally gets absolutely pissed off. They walk away making sort of grunting noises. They leave Aemond with the pig. He looks at the pig and sort of says, you can see that expression on his face. I'm better than this. I'm a Targaryen. I'm just as good as you two. I'm going to prove it. and he takes a nice little wander into the darkness of the dragon pit. I personally was thinking, what the fuck are you doing, mate? You're going to get eaten or grilled alive or both. But fair play to him. He grows a good pair of little grapes and he goes into the darkness looking for an adult dragon. I don't know what he was thinking. He probably thought he's going to go in there and through his courage and his bravery, the dragon's going to sense that and he's going to be able to come out riding and taming an adult dragon. That, to me personally, would have been pretty cool and would have shown sort of his resolve in trying to understand the situation and trying to conquer his ability to feel belittled, basically. But I think this might be something that comes out in later episodes. I think he may well do that. As he gets a little bit older, they're still going to continue to take the piss out of him. But I think there's going to come a point where he's going to be able to tame the absolute monster of dragons and the other two aren't. So I think that's how his little story arc with the dragon pit is going to come through. We then get a scene where Aemon is absolutely bricking it. He sees one of the adult dragons chained up. It comes out of the darkness, pretty much like the scene where Tyrion goes into the dragon pit and sees one of the dragons chained up and it's fucking massive and he shits himself and he puts his hand out. It's kind of like that, but Aemon doesn't get that far. He gets so far in, the dragon comes out spouting fire up to the ceiling and he shits himself like we all would and he absolutely runs out of there. But fair play to him, he went in on his own. No protection, no nothing. So he has got some degree of balls. The next scene is Aemon getting escorted to his mum, the queen, and we get a little bit of a back and forth between Alicent and Viserys. So they're kind of arguing over the boys, about how to bring them up, about how to approach the situation with Rhaenyra. Alicent at this point is still very much not forgiven Rhaenyra. There's a lot of things that Rhaenyra hasn't been held accountable for. All because what? She's a Targaryen. She's the daughter of the king. Bullshit. So Alicent is all about doing the right thing, holding true to the right thing, and basically justice, fairness in the world. She absolutely is the character that tries to do things by the book, tries not to sway too much away from that, but she just ends up getting shit on, whether that's through people abusing her physically, mentally, or they just abuse the fact that she's nice. And I think she's coming to her wit's end with it all, to be honest. So we get a little bit of a back and forth between Alicent and Viserys. It's interesting because Alicent is now questioning a lot more and she's pushing back on the king a lot more. So if he comes out with an opinion or a piece of dialogue, I've noticed now, instead of just sort of sitting there absorbing it, agreeing to it almost, and just nodding her head and just going along, she's now saying no. She's now saying, that's not how I want to do it. What do you think this is? And she's throwing out a lot more questions back to the king. She's getting a lot more braver in what she feels she has as a status. And a lot of that has come from her emotion of being pissed off and betrayed. So it's all building up very, very nicely into Alicent becoming an absolute beast. I don't think she's going to go full-blown Cersei on us, but I think she is very much edging that way in terms of not taking any shit from anybody. I think she is very much going to be that sort of queen by the end of this series. We then get a little bit of a discussion between Alicent and Viserys, and Alicent basically points out that the boys of Rhaenyra don't have golden hair. So it goes back to the whole Joffrey thing again, which I think is where this links in. Joffrey Baratheon, as we know, Ned Stark discovered that he was a Lannister because as he went through the lineage of the Baratheons, not one of them had blonde hair. Joffrey was the only first one that was noted to have blonde hair. All the Lannisters have blonde hair, so that's how you figured it out. Alicent is the same. She has noticed that all of the Targaryen boys on Rhaenyra's side all have dark hair. Targaryens, as we know, have very bright blonde golden hair. So she's discussing this with Viserys. He sort of says, do you know what you're insinuating? It's an absolute accusation that you're coming out with. One, to say my daughter has cheated her husband, but also that she's betrayed the crown, she's betrayed her duty. And we get a sense that Viserys kind of knows that that's gone on, but he's trying to keep it under wraps because he doesn't want to tarnish the Targaryen name. But also, he's gone through this circle before. He's gone through this circle of betrayal before, and Viserys is very much all about what it looks like. He doesn't give a shit if that's going on behind the scenes, really. He's not going to punish his daughter, and Rhaenyra knows that. But he's going to absolutely play dumb. He's going to absolutely palm it off and say, you're accusing the crown, that's treason, versus actually admitting it and doing something about it. He's very proud, very ignorant and stubborn in some ways, but he's an absolutely brilliant character. And I think he's carried that arc very well all the way through the episode so far. So as I said, they get a discussion around the different colour hair of the boys. And Viserys uses an analogy about a baby fowl being born, a different colour, and basically says to Alicent, don't speak of it again. Just because it's a different colour hair, or the fowl's a different colour, and he talks about like a stallion, it was white, and then the fowl comes out like a brownie colour. But basically, they're all one and the same. They're still part of the same family. And also, what are you gaining from bringing this up? So he kind of says to Alicent, keep it under wraps, don't ever speak of this again. And then we see a little bit of a to-do with Kristen. He's still got that hate towards Rhaenyra. Alicent leaves the throne room. She meets Kristen. They're walking down a little courtyard. And she's talking about what the king said. She's talking about her feelings for Rhaenyra. And Kristen calls her a cunt, basically. Says she's selfish. She's like a spider. She bites and poisons people. Drains them of their life force and gets what she wants. He then kind of stops and sort of says to himself, oh, that's not me. I shouldn't have said that to Alicent. I'm really sorry. I don't know what came over me. And then she's like, it's okay, don't worry, you're angry. And we kind of see a side to Kristen that's full of hatred, full of vengeance. Understandably, he's been absolutely betrayed and pissed on. And he hasn't clearly letting that go. He's held that on for 10 years. And we see more of that in a second. So Kristen is absolutely raging. We then get a very awkward scene where Aegon is beating himself off while standing by a windowsill. I kid you not. This is Game of Thrones at its finest. So he's absolutely whacking the meat in the windowsill. I don't know why he's going to ejaculate out the window or something. I don't know. But I was eating my dinner at this point, and I saw it and I almost threw up what I was eating. I just couldn't believe it. Me and my girlfriend were absolutely pissing ourselves laughing. I thought, what is this? So Aegon's beating the meat in the window. Alicent comes in. Typical mum catching you beating off, comes in and pulls him out the window, gets him to cover up his bits, and then she basically gives him a speech about stop being a fucking boy, stop being a little bitch. Doesn't say it to that degree, but in a very sort of constructive but firm way, she says to him, if you want to lay claim to this throne, stop playing with yourself, basically. Step up, be a man, stop teasing, stop going around name calling, stop causing trouble. A true king is one that leads with pride, with passion, with strength, not bullying and belittling people, basically. And she does a very good sort of delivery of lines in this. And you can see Aegon is very much getting a telling off, but she isn't actually hitting him. She's not actually telling him off, per se. But the way she just explains how the king should be, how a future king should be, Aegon feels like a piece of shit, and he knows that he's not playing up to his name, and she's not having it. So she kind of gives him a bit of a bollocking. She then plants a seed about him and him not being able to lay claim to the throne if he carries on the way he is. She then talks about Rhaenyra's children and says, do you think you're going to have claim if her children are running around and you're doing what you're doing? So it plants a sort of a seed in his head of almost vengeance, because Aegon already at this age is very much about status, about power. He wants to be the class clown. He wants to be someone that people look up to, but he's not actually proven that properly. He's just almost like a bully. He's the oldest kid, he's the oldest boy out of a group of 4, 5, 6, and he's just terrorizing people. So there's a different level of respect that comes with what Alicent is saying, and she says, I want you to be that sort of king, not the one that you're currently growing up to be. Which is fair enough. I mean, what king beats off outside a windowsill? So that was the wacky scene for this episode. We then get a scene where we get a little bit of dragon action. So we see Daemon with his wife, Laena. What's confusing me is there's so many Lenas, and they sound very similar in this episode. But Laena, who is the sister of the man that Rhaenyra married, so the homosexual man, Daemon actually married her. So we saw him getting a little bit tasty with her in the last episode. They were dancing as part of the wedding ceremony. But it's confirmed in this episode they did marry. They're flying together on their dragons. We get a very cool CGI scene where the dragon's sort of going through the cloud. Her dragon spouts out fire. She says Dracarys, spits out fire, and then Daemon's dragon sort of flies through it. Brilliant lighting, beautiful sort of textures on the dragon. It don't look too odd. I mean, some of the scenes we've seen before with the dragons look a little bit odd, in my opinion, but this looked really, really good. Nice swooping shots of the castle as well. And they're sort of playing around and they're traveling to what I think is Dorne or somewhere in sort of the Eastern lands. So the next scene is there's an advisor and he's talking to Daemon and his wife about a Martell alliance. So this is, again, we know who the Martells are. Very, very strong house in Dorne. And they're talking about this house that's rising to power. And he basically says, I think we should aid Pentos. I think we should aid them in their conquest. In return, we will gain their favor, we will gain their allegiance, and we can gain absolute power, numbers, battle tactics, because they're absolutely phenomenal fighters. His wife is very reluctant to do this. She kind of looks at Daemon and says, well, we don't do these things for gold. We're here for our sort of family, our legacy. We're here to just negotiate. And Daemon quickly shuts her down, puts his hand on the table and says to the advisor, yeah, we'll do it. So she looks pretty pissed off with Daemon. So already you can see, yet again, this guy doesn't have any luck with women. But yet again, he's in another relationship with a woman. They've got kids this time, so it's a little bit different. But Daemon's actions, the way he sort of handles women and how he handles the relationships has not changed whatsoever. He's with another woman. He does what he wants, says what he wants. And by the end of this episode, again, it ends in tragedy. So we then get the next scene, which is really, really cool. This is one of my favorite scenes in the episode. We see the Queen's children, so Alicent's kids and Rhaenyra's kids, all training together in a courtyard. And the trainer just so happens to be Sir Criston. So he is teaching them how to fight. He's teaching them how to hold a sword, how to block, how to parry, how to stand, everything, footwork. So we get a nice little scene where he's focusing more so on Alicent's 3 boys and not so much on Rhaenyra's or Alicent's 2 boys. Can't remember how they got. One of them's got 3, one of them's got 2. So we can't really see what's going on. But the youngest boys, so Rhaenyra's boys, aren't getting the same attention. As we know, Criston's got history with Rhaenyra. He's still got a vendetta against her. So he's kind of taking it out on the children here. He's not giving them the same advice. They are not getting the same support, the same practice. He's quite blunt with them in what he says in his, his training advice. And the other boys, Alicent's boys, he's like stood with them. He's saying, hold the sword like this, pull your elbow up, stand like that, move like this. He's giving them a lot more sort of on the fly feedback. One of the advisors, so before this next bit happens, Aegon, the cocky one, the eldest one for Alicent's children, gets really cocky. He pushes one of the younger boys over, says that he's great, starts being a big dick about it all. And Criston says, so you think you're ready, do you? And Aegon's like, yeah, I've just taken them down. What do you want me to do? I'm the best one here. Criston says, let's have it then. Puts one arm behind his back, Peter Pan style, and fights Aegon and the other children with one hand, with obviously a blunted sword. So absolutely kicks fuck out of them all. And then the youngest children, so Rhaenyra's children, start to notice that Criston is being a lot more harsh on them than the other boys, Alicent's boys. And they can't quite work it out. Just as this happens, we get a little advisor. So if you remember from the beginning, Rhaenyra has an advisor, like a guard, a new guy, held the baby, said congratulations, and he walks her to the Queen. It's kind of replaced Criston, and you'll see he's replaced Criston in a lot more ways than one. So this advisor's walking in the courtyard, he's overlooking things, and he says to Criston, I've noticed you're not being fair. I've noticed you're not treating the kids the same. If you're going to teach them how to fight, surely these kids need to know as much as the Queen's children. Then Criston kind of says, stay out of it. Why are you involved? I'm the person that's here. I've been assigned to train them. Go and do what you need to do. Stay out of it. The advisor steps back, lets it continue a little bit more. And then he sort of listens, sort of doesn't listen, and then pits the kids against each other. So he pulls them all together and says, do you know what, Mr. Advisor? You're absolutely right. Then he gets all the boys together and he says, right, let's have a free-for-all. And he gets Alicent's children to fight Rhaenyra's children. So the first boy, the eldest boy of Rhaenyra, gets scared. He gets pushed over. The second boy sees his brother getting done in, absolutely goes for it, goes in swinging against Aegon. He does quite well, puts Aegon off of his stance a little bit. But then naturally, because he's quite taller, he's got longer reach, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going into fight tactics now. It's not UFC, but because he's got bigger reach and things like that, he kind of overpowers him a little bit. Then he pushes him down, realizes he's got the upper hand. Instead of doing the honourable thing, stepping back and letting him stand up, Kristen sort of taunts him and says, go on, finish him. Don't let him stand up. Give it to him. And basically teaches him to show no mercy, Cobra Kai style. This really pisses off the advisor. He pulls off Aegon, throws him away, and sort of says, this is enough. Kristen then says, you've just laid your hands on a prince. Who do you think you are? Why are you getting so involved? And just as the advisor's turning his back, he says to the boys, so Rhaenyra's boys, come on, let's go. This is enough for today. Kristen sort of says, it's very odd that you've got such an attachment to boys that are not related to you. It's almost like you're an uncle, a brother, or even they're your sons. And then the advisor sort of pauses, and then the penny drops. So Rhaenyra has been at it again. She's slept with another guard. This time she's produced a few sons. So that is why these boys have dark hair. They are sons of the new advisor / guard, Kingsguard, protector, whatever you want to call him, of Rhaenyra. And Alicent knows it. This is what she was hinting at with Viserys, and obviously she's been talking to Kristen about it as well. Kristen absolutely knows what she's capable of because she slept with him before, promised him the world and things like that, and that's why he's so bitter about it. So he points it out and says, it's almost as if they're your sons. The advisor snaps, gets on top of Kristen, and beats the living shit out of him. I thought he was going to kill him. It's the same sort of scene that we see at the end of episode 5 with Kristen battering one of the sort of love interests of Laena. But I don't think he dies. Kristen sort of lays there. No, he doesn't die. What am I talking about? Kristen takes a hell of a beating, spits out the blood to the side and says, I thought so. So he's obviously right. And he's gone a little bit dark, Kristen. He's going into the whole vengeance spiral. He's very much bent on revenge. He's not let anything go. And he's got a hell of a vendetta against Rhaenyra. So watch this space on Kristen. It's going to go a little bit AWOL. We then get a scene where Rhaenyra is earwigging into a conversation between the Hand of the King, the new Hand of the King, Lionel, and his son Harwell. So Harwell now is confirmed as the advisor. So the Kingsguard, the newly appointed Kristen for Rhaenyra, his name is Harwell, and he has a father, and it just so happens that his father, who's called Lionel, is the new Hand of the King. So Rhaenyra overhears a conversation between the two of them, and so Lionel, the Hand of the King, says to Harwell, do you know what? You need to calm down. We know that you've consummated with the princess. That not only means exile, it only means you lose your job, basically. You lose your lineage. We could be fucking killed for this. Not just you, but me and our family. So the dad absolutely knows, and it's one of those things where, again, in Game of Thrones, everybody knew that Joffrey was a Lannister. Everybody, but only Ned Stark had the balls to actually come out and say it in front of Cersei, in front of everybody, and he lost his head for it. So this is going down the same route. Everyone knows, everyone talks about it behind closed doors, but no one is openly saying it. Alicent came close. Kristen, again, didn't exactly say it, but he insinuated it, and it caused a reaction, so it confirmed it. So he was very clever in how he did it. But she overhears them worrying, basically, about his relationship with Rhaenyra. We then get a scene where Rhaenyra's in her chambers, and Laena strolls in all drunk. Talks about his son, talks about how he wants to actually go and fulfill his destiny now. He wants to go back out onto the sea. He wants to earn some pearls. He talks about someone that he spoke to in his crew at the docks who's found a massive bag of sapphires the size of walnuts, and he wants to get involved. Rhaenyra's like, no, you have to stick to me. You have to pretend to be my husband. You have to stay here, protect your children. And Laena basically says, well, are they my children? And Rhaenyra sort of looks at him. He knows it's not his kids either. Nobody's stupid in this series. And Rhaenyra sort of says, you have a duty. You have a duty as a father. You have a duty as a future king. You have a duty to your future sons, your future grandsons, granddaughters. So she kind of just spins it straight back on him without actually admitting it. And sometimes not saying anything is an admission of guilt. But she spins it straight back on him and says, we're wed together. You have to stay here. What good is it going out onto the sea? We need you here. So he's not having it. He says, I've played my part for 10 years. I've done what you've asked me to do. I've had enough. I want to give in to, my desire, basically. Go out onto the sea, meet some nice men, pillage some nice treasure, and I've had enough. He doesn't want to play the role anymore. So they have a little bit of an argument. He then mentions a line where he says a wise sailor flees before the storm rises. So he senses something's going on, and Rhaenyra basically says to him, we're at risk here. People are rising up against us. I've heard conversations where people are insinuating that I've slept with my Kingsguard. And Laena's like, well, haven't you? And she's like, how dare you? You know, I'm a Targaryen. I'm pure of blood, all that kind of thing. Again, lying through her teeth. And Rhaenyra's becoming very sneaky, very manipulative with lots of different people. But some people have bought it, some people haven't. Unfortunately, her little web of lies is slowly becoming unraveled. And more people are realizing that she is full of shit. So he's not having it. He's saying, I want to go and do what I want to do. We then get a scene where Laena, which is Daemon's wife, is discussing how he needs to be more than what he says he is. And she basically says, you know, I know you're up every night reading stories, legends about the Dragon Lords. Be something more, be something different. You're better than that. Kind of sets a little seed in Daemon's head. You see him sort of looking as if to say, yeah, you're right. But he doesn't want to admit it because he's stubborn as hell. Then we get a scene where the council are having a meeting. They're talking about the Stepstones and about the rebellion that's building there with the Blackwoods and what to do. We then get a scene where Rhaenyra is proposing that one of her sons marries one of Alicent's daughters, or Alicent's daughter, and she will also give a clutch of eggs from Syrax, which is her dragon. Viserys is like, oh, what a lovely gesture. And Alicent's like, we'll think about it. Obviously not going to happen. She's not having that. She knows that Rhaenyra is trying to be sneaky. She's trying to cement her, not only hers, but her family's options to sit on the throne. She wants to secure that legacy. She wants to secure that promise. And the only way that she can do that is by marrying the two children together. It secures the bloodline. Viserys is all over it, and he thinks, yeah, he looks at her like a proud dad and says, yeah, you thought of that. I love it. But Alicent's not having any of it, and she just says, we'll think about it. We then see Lionel, who is, as you remember, Hand of the King. He wants to sack it in. He goes to Viserys and says, I can't handle the shame of my house. I need to leave. And Viserys is like, what do you mean? And Alicent stood with Viserys at this point. And she's like, yeah, what do you mean? And she knows that Lionel knows about her son, or his son, having an affair, sleeping with Rhaenyra, committing treason to the crown. It's a death sentence, it's an exile sentence, and obviously all the children should be killed as well, because they've come from an impure bloodline and an impure relationship. So Alicent's sort of prodding him to be open and honest about what he's discovered. Lionel naturally says, I can't tell you. Viserys says, why not? Why can't you tell me? You're the Hand of the King. You owe your duty to the crown. He says, no, my king, I'm sorry. I can't say anything, but please let me go back to Harrenhal. Please let me live out my days there along with my son. Viserys basically says, no, if you're not going to tell me what's caused all this and why you want to sack in your Hand of the King status, then fuck you. You're going to live out your days as the Hand of the King. I'm not agreeing to it. And Lionel sort of says, okay, no worries, and just sort of bows his head down. One thing that the King Viserys does grant is Lionel to go back to Harrenhal temporarily, but Lionel in the second breath says, can my son return to Harrenhal permanently? Can he go there and live out his days, look after my castle, all that kind of stuff? Viserys, I assume, knows at this point what's happened. His son's done something, and he knows there's a relationship there with Rhaenyra, which is why we talked about the whole foul birth with Alicent earlier. There was the analogy about the horse being born. Viserys knows. Viserys knows that Rhaenyra's got a dodgy relationship with one of her guards, but he doesn't give a shit. She's living up to what he told her to do. She's producing children. She's sort of sniffing her dad's ass seat, ready to get on the throne, and she's in line next. And he's trying his best to keep her behavior under wraps. He's trying his best to keep the Targaryen name clean. So he's having none of it, but he does grant the Hand of the King the wish for his son, Harwin, I think it is, to go back to Harrenhal. He says, yeah, that's fine, I can deal with that, and you can go and stay with him for a bit, but you're coming back, you're living out your days as Hand of the King. So Lionel says, thank you, yeah, that's great. We then get a scene where Alicent is sat with Lord Varys, not the same Lord Varys from Game of Thrones, but interestingly, he's got the same role. So he's very much a sneak, very much a spy. He's got lots of he's basically an information gatherer. He is the oracle of knowledge. So he is the master of whisperers. He plays the same role in this. So we also learn in this scene that Lord Varys, who is the Queen's advisor, he's part of the council, he's part of the war table for the crown. He is also the brother of Harwin. So Lionel, Hand of the King, has two sons. Harwin, one of them of which Harwin is banging Rhaenyra, got the kids with her. And Lord Varys is the advisor to the Queen Alicent. So he talks about his brother in this. He says about what he's doing, and he knows that there's stuff there that shouldn't come out, but, you know, for the good of the crown, should be on the table. He also says that he's serving a purpose to Alicent, that he's not going to let her down. He's very sneaky in his wording. You can already see that Alicent has already bought into his lies. She's bought into what he knows and the way he delivers his dialogue. She absolutely listens. He sings and she listens. It's that kind of relationship that we see on screen. Brilliantly acted, brilliantly put together. And Varys basically talks about traitors can go. We need to get rid of people. We need to sack people off. If we want to ensure that your lineage sustains the crown and we get no rebellion, no uprising, we need to make an example out of people. And Alicent's kind of like, well, what do you mean? And in the next scene, Varys goes down to the cells in the keep. There's like murderers, rapists, traitors in there. And he says to them all, you know, you're all sentenced to death. You're all going to die within the next few days. I'm going to strike a deal with you. I'm going to show you mercy. But in exchange, you need to do something for me. And they're like, what? Gets them all out of the cell. He gets the guards to cut all their tongues off, I assume, so they can't speak. And we then get a scene later on with, I'm thinking, what is he going to do? I thought he was going to use them to murder Rhaenyra, but I thought that's too extreme. Plus, Viserys is still alive. He wouldn't allow that, but who knows? We then get a scene where Daemon and Lady Laena are in the process of giving birth. So she is having another baby. And Daemon at this point, I think, has got 3 children, 2 at least. But she's given birth to another. We get, unfortunately, the same distressing news that she is dying in childbirth. So the maester who's trying to help deliver the baby comes up to Daemon. It's the same that we saw in episode 1 with Rhaenyra's mother and Viserys. And he says, look, we can't get the baby out. She's been trying for hours. She's in excruciating pain. I can try and cut the baby out if you want me to. And Daemon's like, does it mean that she's going to live? And Maester's like, nah, she's dead. She's no matter what, but we could save the baby. He doesn't really say what to do. He just sort of stares there blankly. He's never had to deal with this type of emotion before. And the Maester kind of does what he does. They try to give her sort of milk of the poppy to calm her down and things like that. But we don't really see what Daemon wants. And you can see the conflict on his face. I think this is the first time as well that he actually grew some sort of emotional attachment to somebody and is being ripped from him. So his emotion at the moment, he feels inferior. He's got no claim to any land. He is the younger brother of the king and he's got nothing to show for it. People have shit on him. They take the piss out of him because he can't get his dick up. There's so many stuff that for Daemon's character arc is slowly building to him exploding as well. And that could cause an absolute uproar if he goes off the wall on it. So we then get a scene where Laena is walking towards the dragon. The dragon's chained up on the beach. She walks towards the dragon and she's holding her stomach. She's like hobbling like this. And she goes up to the dragon and she says, Dracarys. And I'm like, what the fuck? But obviously she's in so much pain. She knows she's done for. The maesters have told her. She's overheard the conversation with Daemon. She knows she's not going to make it. So she wants to just die. She wants to just end it. What I thought was pretty brutal, though, is that she doesn't even give Daemon the chance to cut the baby out. She's decided for herself that they're both going to die. And I think it's twofold. One, obviously, it's her body, it's her choice. But also, and also in the earlier scenes when Daemon was kind of putting his fist down and saying, I'm doing this. This is her way of kind of saying, fuck you. This is my choice. I'm doing this. So it's kind of getting him back. But also, I don't think she wants to bring another child into the world under the sort of parentship of Daemon. I think she's very much worried about what her kids are going to be like in the future. I don't think she likes the way he delivers things. I don't think she likes the way he presents himself, how he belittles himself. He's very unpredictable, very irrational, quite erratic. He can be angry, and it's something that I don't think she wants another child to be victim to. So all encompassing all that information, she decides She wants to end her life and her unborn child's life. So she tries to get the dragon to kill her with dragonfire. Dragon's not up for it. And it's beautifully done because you can see on the dragon's face is a command, but I don't want to do this. She's asking me to kill her. I'm not going to do it. And there's actually conflict on the dragon's face. This is obviously CGI, but the facial animations and the way that the camera's panning between the two, she's like, Dracarys, Dracarys, and is not doing it. It's just kind of looking at her as if to say, no, I can't. And you can sort of see the conflict. It knows it should do it. It's been trained to do it, but also it's very loyal. It's loyal to her in terms of listening to commands, but it's grown an absolute attachment. It loves her. It doesn't want to have to kill her off. It's like if someone asked you, euthanasia, it's a hot topic. If one of your family said to you, I'm in absolute excruciating pain, please kill me, would you do it? You'd have a conflict of moral, but also you don't want that family relative to suffer anymore. So would you consider it? I don't know. And you kind of see that conflict on the dragon's face. Brilliantly done. And then, reluctantly, Daemon's walking up the sort of fast walking up the beach, shouts out to her and says, what are you doing? Stop. The dragon sort of clocks Daemon, looks at her, realizes, I think, and this is where it was beautifully written, realizes that she's in more pain than the dragon's actually seeing. It goes beyond that. It goes beyond the mental pain. The dragon realizes that Daemon's asking her to stop. There's no relationship there. She's actually not happy. Even if she does survive and she lives and she goes through this physical pain, she has to put her with that dick. And the dragon at this point clocks it and goes, do you know what? This is the right thing to do. And it blasts her with fire. Daemon looks a little bit shocked, pissed off and annoyed, upset. But as we know Daemon, I think he'll very quickly get over it. Within a month or two, he'll be with someone else, banging out more kids, working on his legacy and his lineage. He is probably, if not my favourite character, he's up there with Viserys. Rhaenyra's character is brilliant as well. I actually really like Alicent's character more now as well. She pissed me off in the first couple of episodes and I didn't really see the point of her, but her character arc has really, really gone through the roof in terms of, you know, the changes that we've seen her go through. I really do feel for her. She is just trying to do the right thing, but she's being constantly pissed on. So loads of diverse characters and things going on here. So the final scenes we get in this episode, obviously she goes up in smoke. Then we see Harwin and his son. No, Harwin's the son. So Lionel and his son Harwin, so Hand of the King and Rhaenyra fucker, are going towards Harrenhal. You see them on their horses. They get to Harrenhal. They have a little sit down. We then get a very eerie speech by Lord Varys, which is narrated over the scenes, and we cut basically to Viserys, to Rhaenyra, to Alicent, Kristen, anyone that's gone through pain, which is most of these fucking characters, let's be honest. He kind of goes to each of their individual statuses, go to their individual sort of present moments, and you can see their struggle with every single one of them. That something's going on with each of them. They're feeling at an all-time low. And the narration on it almost kind of announces the start of something huge, like a rebellion or just an emotional tipping point. I thought it was beautifully done. It was so well written, so well put together. So he's talking about the death of things, about how people do stuff for children, their own kids, and about how important we think that is. But actually, we all just turn to dust. What does it mean in the end? What do we leave for ourselves? What about our own happiness? Kind of gives that sort of speech, which is exactly what's happening throughout this show. You've got Rhaenyra doing what she wants to do for her kids. Alicent's trying to do right by her kids. Daemon's now got a brood as well, and he's trying to live on his legacy for his own means. You've got the kids themselves trying to become their own people, trying to live out their own lineage, trying to create their own name because of what their parents have taught them. Viserys wants someone that's strong on the throne. He wants a strong family bloodline. So it does actually revolve all around the kids, and it brings in beautifully about this vicious cycle of nobody's actually living for themselves. Everyone's living for their parents, for the king, about what their mother wants, what their father wants, and they actually turn out to be the people they are in a bad way because they're molded into something they don't want to be. And that sort of speech that's going on through this scene is absolutely perfect. It talks about like death, about new life, about how we try and put all our trust in all our feelings and our emotion, and we try to right our wrongs with our children and mistakes we've made. We try to teach them not to do the same, but we're actually just creating carbon copies of ourselves, is essentially what Lord Varys is saying in this speech. We then get a very disturbing scene where Lionel is woken up to sort of coughing, choking, and I knew straight away what this is. There's smoke. The castle's on fire. Harrenhal is burning, which is actually quite brilliant, because if you remember in Game of Thrones where Tywin in the mountains in Harrenhal, and they've got prisoners and they're torturing them, and Arya ends up there as sort of like a cupbearer. Harrenhal is in ashes. It's been destroyed. All of it's been burnt out. It's the outer structure is kind of there, and Tywin talks about how it was once a very strong castle, about how it had a very strong family name. Before the Lannisters took it over, he talks about the legacy of the building, basically, and that is obviously how it happens. That's how the fire happens. So there's an inside job. It's the people that Lord Varys freed from the cells and said, "I'll make you a deal, but you got to do something for me. This is the deal." He's ordered them to go over there, set fire to Harrenhal, and basically ensure that Lionel, but at least Harwin, aka Rhaenyra fucker, aka Kingsguard, that's committed exile, that's committed treason to the crown, is dead. He wants to make sure he doesn't come out of there. One, probably to stop him spreading more children. One, to also get him out of the picture, but that leaves one little tick off the list of things to do in order to ensure that Alicent and her children ascend the throne. Next on the list is Rhaenyra and potentially the kids. So that's one down. Correct me if I'm wrong as well, guys, but he absolutely does die. We see a body that's cremated, corpsed, flame grilled steak, all that kind of stuff. He's done. So I can't remember seeing Lionel, but I'm pretty sure both of them die in the fire. There's absolute carnage. I don't think anyone comes out of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the next episode we see Lionel or Harwin rolling out the back of the castle, or sort of coming up from the river, covered in soot, all that kind of stuff. And just to make us think that they're dead at this point in true Game of Thrones fashion. They might come in at a later stage, just like they did with the Hound. We thought he was dead, but he turns up in a couple of seasons later. So who knows? But they look pretty dead to me. The last final scene, we cut to Varys, and he's talking to Alicent. Alicent is quite shaken, and she says, "I never thought you were going to do this. I didn't sign up to it. This is not what I wanted. This is not how I wanted to deal with it." And Varys kind of says, "In the end, you will thank me. This is the beginning of things of change. This is the beginning of something that's going to secure your legacy. This is what you want, isn't it?" She's kind of like, "Well, yeah." And he very symbolically plucks off a flower, which to me looks poisonous. It looks like it's going to do some damage, and potentially it's nightshade. I'm not sure. I couldn't work out what the flower was, but we've seen it in prior episodes, and I'm sure they've been talking about it before. I'm pretty confident it's poisonous. And he just sort of symbolically pulls the flower off, looks at it and says, "In the end, you'll thank me." So we get the impression that he's going to attempt to either poison the kids, Rhaenyra, Viserys, or all of them. And it's going to be mental. So that is how the episode ends. An absolutely bonkers episode. Loads of stuff happens. There's no real fighting in this, but the drama in this episode is absolutely on par. It's one of my favourite episodes so far, along with episode 5. I think 5 and 6 at this point are my absolute favourites. The tension is absolutely building. The drama's building. There's issues coming in towards the crown, towards the throne. The Targaryen name is being threatened from all angles, all because of stuff that's happened within inside it. And that is one of the slogans for the show. The only way that the House of the Dragon is going to burn and crumble is from within. So they create their own problems, basically. Rhaenyra shouldn't keep sleeping with the Kingsguard and producing illegitimate children. Viserys needs to be honest with himself and stop trying to be the king. He needs to step up as a man at some point. Alicent also is boiling over. She's had an absolute enough of being betrayed, being lied to, all this pretense. She wants to do it by the book, do it right by the people, justice, delivery, goodness, virtue, and it's not happening, and she's getting fucked off of it. Kristen's got a vendetta against Rhaenyra. He hasn't forgiven her for basically leading him up the garden path and kicking him in the balls. He thought he was going to sail away to the promised land, have lots of kids with her, be happy ever after. That didn't happen. She shot him down. Daemon can't get his knob up. He's struggling with his family legacy, struggling with who he is. He keeps reading about dragon lords all throughout Targaryen history. He's got absolutely fuck all to show for it. He's kind of like a window shopper type of king. He wants to become one of the best, like Aegon the Conqueror. He keeps talking about Aegon the Conqueror and Balerion the Dread. Oh, I can be bigger and better than them. And people keep shooting him down and saying, "No, you're not. You just need to be who you need to be. Accept it." And he's not happy with that. So There's loads and loads of stuff that is going to absolutely culminate in the following episodes. I think by the end of this season, at least 2 of these characters are going to die. I think we're going to see the beginning of the Blackwoods Rebellion. We've got Martells being introduced now in this episode. We've obviously had a character switch around in terms of the actresses that play Rhaenyra and Alicent. But for me personally, first impressions, they acted it sublimely. Really, really good. I was a little bit reluctant because I was just getting used to Alicent and Rhaenyra, how they deliver their sort of dialogue. They got the characters down to an absolute T. I thought they were brilliant. Just as I got really sort of at home and comfortable with how they are and enjoying their on-screen presence, they switched them over and I was like, oh, really? But they did announce that it was going to happen midway through the season. So we did the swap. It's a good swap. So far, so good. Both of them are acting brilliantly. I love their interactions with each other. I love the whole politics that are going on, both on-screen, off-screen. And it's all about pretense. It's all about what it looks like. It's about the Targaryen name. It's about doing what's right. But people obviously are human. They've got emotions. They've got feelings. And all the time, people are being told to suppress it and being told to let it go. So an absolutely drama-filled episode. I loved it. I think it's culminating into something crazy. I love where all the character arcs are going. Brilliant way to introduce the children as well, sort of pitting them off against each other. That's kind of how it is in the family house as well. And I think this is going places. This is the polar opposite to Rings of Power. I am thoroughly enjoying this show. As I said, I think this is one of my all-time favourite episodes so far. I hope it gets better. If I was to give this an honest mark out of 10, it's a solid and easy 9 out of 10, guys. This is the pinnacle of script writing, the pinnacle of great acting. When you get a good team of people together that can put together great CGI, great cinematography, great lighting, great acting, great story delivery, great voice dialogue, and you've got some phenomenal writers that can put together some intense dramatic scenes, and they're not afraid to go to that limit, you get this as an output. Absolutely amazing. I'm loving it. So stay tuned for episode 7 next week. I will try and get it out a bit sooner for you guys, so sorry that there's a bit of delay on this one. Rings of Power, just as a heads up, is going to get a delay again. Episode 6 is going to be probably Sunday now because I've got my son over the weekend, so I'm not going to have time to go in and shoot the recording and edit it ready for Friday, Saturday. It's going to be Sunday by the time it comes out. So just a heads up on that. But on the next episode for this one, I will try and keep it as close to Monday as possible. I'll get it out to you by Tuesday at the very latest. So thank you for your patience in this. I really enjoyed it. I know a few of you have asked me on, my opinions on it. Really, really enjoyed it. Polar opposite to Rings of Power. That can fucking do one now. I'm so deflated with it. But this is refreshing. This is counterbalancing Rings of Power massively. 9 out of 10 for me. Can't wait to see more. Can't wait to see what the new actresses for Rhaenyra and Alicent can deliver as well. I hope they can continue that amazing story arc that we've already got from the prior actresses. So looking forward to it. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you thought of this episode. Is there anything that you think I've missed? Do you disagree with me in any way, or did you absolutely enjoy it as much as I did? I will see you again very soon. Stay tuned to the channel, and I'll see you next week. Take care, guys. Peace.